This card has been hyped like crazy over the last few months, and I think it's on track to be one of the top cards of 2023. Hey, what's up guys, I'm Kyle, and this video is about the Bilt MasterCard. And as of right now, in January 2023, this is the only card on the market that's going to let you earn points on your rent. And if you're like me and you looked into paying your rent with credit cards to earn points before, you might have seen that they usually charge a 2.5% to 3% or even more fee for using your credit card to pay rent on most online systems. But actually, what's unique about the Bilt card is you actually get around that. Every time I use this card, I'm kind of wondering how the company is even profitable, but I'm going to take advantage of it while I can. So the way they get around the credit card fee is they actually spin up kind of a ghost bank account for you. I'm not exactly sure how it works in the back end, but they actually give you a bank account number to charge to, which then charges to your Bilt card. This allows you to bill it like a bank account with your landlord, but still earn the credit card points. And if you normally pay by check, they actually have a service where they can mail a check for you as well. So actually super complete, gets around all the fees, and honestly it's been super usable so far. Now you're probably wondering what's the catch, because if you're like me, you're probably saying there's no way that that's profitable for them, and it probably isn't. But it's the main feature of the card. So how do they get you to actually use the card for anything else? Well, to actually get the points from your rent, you have to post 5 transactions each statement period. Rent counts as 1, so you need to do 4 other transactions. I think Daniel Braun referred to this as his coffee card. He keeps it in his wallet, pays for small transactions. The multipliers on the card are actually not horrible. You get 3% on dining, you get 2% on travel. You probably have better cards for those different categories, so I would just keep it for small transactions. I use it to pay for parking when I go to the mall. I use it for boba every once in a while. That's kind of the main things I use the card for outside of paying for my rent. And worst case, you could do some small Amazon transactions at the end of the month if you're running out of time. Now that we've got the basics out of the way, let's go into some of the specifics about the card. One thing to point out is that the card is actually set up by Wells Fargo in the back end, so you're going to get a Wells Fargo credit account. Some people might not like that. I don't mind Wells Fargo too much, but I know some people don't quite like Wells Fargo, so that's a good thing to know going into it. Okay, mid-editing Kyle here. If you've been doing research on the Bilt card, you might have actually seen news articles showing that the Bilt card has actually had a ton of fraud connected to it recently. I remember the Bilt team posted on Reddit saying that there were compromised merchants that leaked a bunch of account numbers, and then basically now bad actors are brute forcing a bunch of Bilt accounts, causing a bunch of users to get fraud on their cards, even some people saying that they're getting fraud before their card even arrived in the mail. And funnily enough, this actually happened to me on this exact Bilt card. But I do think this gives me a pretty unique chance to talk about my experience with customer support for Bilt. So I contacted customer support actually at like 10 p.m. my time, which is almost 1 a.m. East Coast time. They started off the call by reminding me that they were basically closed, but they were able to remove all the fraudulent charges, which were all under $1. I think they were kind of testing out my account. And then they were able to get me a new card shipped in the mail within a few days. They actually transferred the new card number onto my Apple Pay account, so I was able to continue using the card, which was super helpful because I had actually been, about 2 transactions short of the 5 transactions per month amount that Bilt wants you to have. So while I definitely would have loved to not have had my credit card number stolen, I can say that the customer support is pretty solid from Bilt. Your mileage may vary though, definitely. Okay, now back to the review. It's one of the most, I guess, sort of millennial focused cards that I've seen come out. Obviously, most renters are going to be younger, so they've definitely leaned into that and they've focused on the younger audience. They have good social media presence. Every month they have what's called Rent Day on the first of the month. They do quizzes for extra points on the app, and they do a big giveaway where they pay somebody's rent for the month if you can answer a riddle, basically. So super fun card. I like their social media presence. I like how they're marketing themselves. It would be nice if they had some sort of intro bonus. Maybe you get $100 towards your first rent, but they don't have anything like that. So you're pretty much just going to have to get the card for what it is, and that it gives you points on rent, which I think is more than enough reason to pick up the card. I think another thing that's interesting about the Bilt card is we are going into a time of a little bit more economic uncertainty. Maybe people are cutting back on their spending in areas like dining, or maybe they're, instead of shopping at Whole Foods, they're going to the local grocery store. But I think something that's kind of non-negotiable that's in our spend is actually going to be our rent. So the Bilt card actually, it works pretty well in a time of recession. Your rent is probably going to be your largest expenditure right now, and it sure will be, in 6 months unless you buy a home. So I think it covers a huge hole in most setups, and it's actually pretty recession proof, which, normally I wouldn't need to say, but I think it's pretty relevant to the current time we're in. So it's pretty much kind of a always good pickup if you are renting and foresee yourself renting beyond the next 2 or 3 months. Average rent in the United States is over $1,300 at this point, and for most people they don't have any way of earning points on that. Maybe they've been watching a ton of videos, they've been picking up cards to cover their dining, their grocery store spending, even their gas, but their biggest expense isn't covered by their credit card setup. So the Bilt card kind of covers that hole. They've got a whole system where they envision you using your points towards mortgage or a down payment on your first house. I don't think there's quite enough room for that. I mean, even if you have 100,000 Bilt points, what's that, $1,000 at 1 cent per point towards your down payment? That's a lot of rent to pay for not a whole bunch of rewards. So I think the best way you can actually use the points is through transfer partners. And you might be saying, whoa, no way this card has transfer partners. You know, that's something you get with the Amex Platinum, the Chase Sapphire cards, but actually the Bilt card does have transfer partners. You have companies like IHG, Air Canada Aeroplan, Hawaiian Airlines, and even some of the most valuable ones like World of Hyatt, you actually get with the Bilt card, which is crazy. And now, like I mentioned, since this can be a card that I feel like is pretty good for people who aren't even involved in the points and miles game yet, let's look at a couple examples of how much these points get you. So let's say, for example, you're spending $2,000 a month on rent. Well, over 12 months, if you're using the Bilt card to pay every month, you get 24,000 points over the course of the year. Let's say you've been eyeing taking a trip to London, for example. Here's this Andaz Liverpool Street in London that costs 20,000 points a night. And it retails for £450 per night, which is more than $450. So for your 20,000 points there, you're getting maybe $500 in value. So your points are worth what? Almost 3 cents per point at that point. So even though your Bilt card says maybe it's getting 1x points, you might be thinking, oh, that's like 1% back. It actually can be more like 2 or 3% back if you can find some sweet spots where the points are worth more than 1 cent per point. So in this example, just by using your Bilt card for a whole year, you can get a free night at a pretty nice Hyatt hotel in London if maybe you've been eyeing that, and it extends more to flights. Obviously, there are areas where you can get more value for your points. There's definitely areas where you can get less value for your points, so you got to keep an eye out for that. But these points can be super valuable and can unlock opportunities for you to get nicer experiences than you would otherwise get. Because, I mean, in a lot of these examples, the best value for your points is going to be on the more high end. So maybe if you looked at a lower end hotel that costs about $200 a night, you know, something a little bit cheaper, maybe you're not getting quite as much value for your points if you use points instead. It's kind of all free money in the end, right? Before you weren't getting any points for this, so I think it's really still a no-brainer. And once you get into it, once you have all these points, you might have enough points where you can say, you know, I'll take a flyer on this more expensive hotel. Ask Sebi says this a lot, get to experience how the other half lives without having to spend that kind of money. I think it's a pretty great experience, right? These type of once-in-a-lifetime experiences, unless you start making some serious money. So trying to figure out how to get these points as efficiently and as easily as possible is really what we're aiming for here, so you can get these one-of-a-kind, once-in-a-lifetime experiences that you might never be able to get otherwise. Pretty much don't have any other options for how you want to get rewards on rent without paying fees, so I think the Bilt card is pretty much a no-brainer if you're renting, and you will be in the near future. So for me, for example, my girlfriend and I live in a pretty high cost of living area. We pay almost $5,000 a month for rent. So you can imagine that's our biggest category by far. So the Bilt card is amazing. Even just having it for a couple months, I have more than 20,000 Bilt points, which is, you know, as much as you get from a Chase Freedom sign-up, right? So it's actually kind of insane value. And while the Bilt card isn't part of, you know, an existing credit card system, it's an insanely solid earner on its own. And the fact that it has transfer partners means you don't really need it to be a part of another system. It's got okay multipliers. I think the best part is a lot of the small transactions you're going to make are going to be, you know, picking up coffee, dining purchases. And that's where you get 3% back. So it's not really much worse than any other cards you might have in your system. So the Bilt card is actually really solid in that way too. You're not really having to lose out on, you know, some rewards. There's not a huge opportunity cost of using the Bilt card for those small transactions to hit that 5 transactions per statement period to get the points from your rent. And of course, if you get the points on your rent, that's at least going to be, you know, 1,000 points, which is way more than you're going to get on that transaction with another card. So even if you try to look at the opportunity cost of, well, the Bilt card's making me use it 4 other times per month, am I going to lose out on too many points? It's pretty much never going to make you lose out on points given how much you're going to get from the rent by making those 4 other transactions. So I think it's pretty much always worth it if you are a renter. Part of me does feel a little bit like this card might be too good to be true. I'm not sure how long it's going to last. Brian Kelly from The Points Guy, he's the Points Guy, the founder. He's an investor and an advisor. So I have pretty high confidence that they have a pretty rock solid plan. It makes sense why their marketing and their system is so good for average users and even for, you know, travel hackers, credit card nerds like me. But I am just a little worried, are they going to have to add an annual fee? Are they going to have to lower some of the multipliers? Maybe they give you 0.5x on rent in the future. But I think for now, even if you don't think it's going to be sustainable, there's no annual fee. There is the hard credit check to get the card, but I think that's worth it even if you can just use it for 6 months of rent, right? That's a lot of points you could be using towards luxury travel, especially with companies like Hyatt being a transfer partner. You're going to get great value for those points at minimum. You know, for how I want to use my Bilt points. Another partner that they have that pretty much you can't get anywhere else is American Airlines. So they've got pretty good usability for their points. I aim to try to get about 2 cents per point at least with my Bilt points. I haven't had the ability to transfer them out yet, but you know, I treat them kind of like any other high points that I get from Chase, right? So I think the Bilt card is an amazing card. Even if you've got a super complicated credit card setup, the Bilt card covers a huge hole in most setups. You probably aren't using anything for rent, or maybe you're using a card for rent, but you're paying a credit card fee, or using something like plastic to get around the fee to make it a little lower. Bilt will either save you money or get you points on something where you weren't getting points for before. Or if you're a beginner, I mean, honestly, if you just have, you know, maybe the Freedom cards, the Bilt card is going to supercharge your earning potential for points. So I think the Bilt card is pretty much a great pickup for anybody. They're not sponsoring me. I do have an affiliate link down below. If you want to sign up for the card, I'll get some extra points coming my way. But it really has been one of my favorite cards I got. In the last 6 months, year, it's going to be probably my highest point earning card because of how much I have to spend on rent every month. So I really think you should consider picking it up. I wouldn't sleep on this one. I also don't know how much longer it's going to last. I have confidence that they've got their plan together to make it sustainable, but you never know. This does feel like it's probably unsustainable for them. So I would definitely jump on the Bilt card, because even if you wait an extra month, if you're paying $1,500 a month for rent, for example, that's 1,500 points you could have had if you get it before the next time you pay rent. Super easy to set up. I really like their app. It's pretty well laid out, pretty easy to navigate. Yeah, I don't have too much bad to say. I wish they had, better travel rewards categories. Maybe if they had some more luxury protection, but there's no way they're doing that on a free card, right? So I think you should definitely take a look at it. Use my link down below if you want to support the channel. And yeah, I think this has potential to be the best or one of the best cards of 2023, and I'm excited to keep collecting my 5,000 points every month. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate you watching to the end of the video. Use my link down below if you want to check out the card and support the channel.